we're going to take a look at what's involved with installing an Old Man Emu suspension system onto a 2019 Ford Ranger. ARB offers several suspension component options to fine-tune the ride quality and performance based on the aftermarket accessories installed and load carrying requirements. To perform the installation, you will need the following tools: a basic mechanics toolkit, a floor jack and rated jack stands, a strut compressor or access to a shop with a strut compressor, C-clamps, and grease. Before starting, you'll want to plan for about 4 hours of installation time. We'll start with the front suspension. First, jack the vehicle up and support with rated jack stands. Next, remove the wheels to access all the suspension components. Remove the ABS line bracket and ABS sensor, as well as the bracket for the rubber brake line. This will allow you to lower the control arm without damaging components. Remove and disconnect the tie rod then. Disconnect the upper ball joint. Remove the nuts from the strut top hat. Remove the nuts from the lower strut mount. At this point, the whole lower control arm assembly should drop freely, allowing you to remove the factory strut assembly. At this point, it's time to assemble the Old Man Emu strut assembly. You can assemble the strut assembly at home using a strut compressor. However, ARB recommends a professional shop to complete this task. Once assembled, install the strut assembly into the Ranger. Secure the lower mount of the strut using the provided hardware. Reinstall the upper ball joint. Reinstall all the factory brake line brackets and ABS sensor. Tighten the top 3 strut mounting nuts and torque the 3 nuts per the vehicle specifications. Reattach and torque the steering tie rod. Now you can torque the upper ball joint to the vehicle specifications. And that takes care of the front suspension. Now we can bolt on the wheel, torque it to specifications, and move to the rear suspension. Just like the front, jack the vehicle up and support with rated jack stands. Remove the wheels to give you full access to the rear suspension system. First, we'll start by removing the factory shock absorbers. You'll start with a lower mount first, and then move to the upper mount. Once the shocks are removed, support the axle housing with the floor jack. Once supported, remove the factory U-bolts and discard. We will be replacing the U-bolts with Old Man Emu bolts. Next, remove the factory leaf spring both at the shackle and the fixed end. In this case, we will be reusing the factory shackles, so make sure you save all the hardware. We do now offer an optional greasable shackle kit for the Ford Ranger for an optimal ride experience. Once the U-bolts have been removed, slowly lower the floor jack to separate the leaf spring from the axle housing. At this point, you should be able to remove the factory leaf spring from the vehicle. The factory bump stop pad will be reused. To remove, you will need to disassemble the factory leaf pack, as the pad is retained via the leaf spring center bolt. Use a C-clamp to safely remove the spring tension from the leaf pack and then remove the center bolt. Repeat the process with the Old Man Emu spring to install the factory bump stop pad. Grease the Old Man Emu bushings prior to installation into the spring eyes. Once the bushings are greased and installed, install the supplied sleeve in the frame mount spring eye. This will be the end that the yellow arrow is facing. Now it's time to install the springs. We have found that it's easier to start with the shackle end first. Once the shackle end is secure, move on to the fixed end using the factory spring bolt. After the springs have been mounted to both sides of the vehicle, install the Old Man Emu U-bolts and factory spring plates. Once both springs are installed, it's time to install the Old Man Emu shocks. First, start with the top mount using the factory bolt. Move to the lower mount, also using the factory mounting bolt. After all the components are installed, torque everything to the factory specifications. Now it's time to reinstall the wheels and torque the lug nuts. ARB always recommends having a professional alignment completed when any suspension is altered, and remember to retorque all components after a couple of 100 miles. That wraps up the 2019 Ford Ranger Old Man Emu Suspension installation. For more information about Old Man Emu Suspension and other ARB products for the new Ford Ranger, please visit arbusa.com.